looking great. Baking bread is a very, very fun thing to do in your kitchen, and it doesn't take many ingredients for you to be able to make something super and extremely delicious. In this chapter, we are going to be talking about the fundamental ingredients that we need to actually make bread. We're talking about the basics from flour, water, and salt to some extra things that can help improve the texture and flavor of your bread. So I'm going to take you step by step with each of these ingredients and let you know how it's going to impact the flavor and texture and chewiness and overall amazingness of your bread. Let's talk about gluten and flour. Let's talk about gluten. We talk about gluten, we talk about flour. The magic that is flour, the most critical component to making bread. Using and understanding different flours will help you find the right balance in the flavor or texture that you're looking for in the dough that you're making. So you might be wondering, what is flour? Sounds like a silly question, but it's really not. Flour is actually derived from wheat. Wheat is a crop that generates berries, and the berries from that wheat are milled into flour. The way it's milled and sifted is actually what results in the type of flour that you get. I'm gonna show you exactly what I'm talking about, but we're gonna start with the basics. We're gonna start with one of the most nutrient-dense flours, and that is rye flour. Rye flour. Rye, you may ask? Rye flour is the flour of choice for me when I'm starting things like my sourdough starter or when I'm looking to add a lot of flavor that punches. You can definitely see these kind of darker speckles in the flour, and that just kind of indicates to you that not all of those nutrients have been sifted out in this process of creating it from berry to actual flour. The next type of flour I'm gonna talk to you about, good old-fashioned whole wheat flour, is absolutely critical for your home baking experience. With whole wheat, you're retaining all of the components of that wheat berry. You're retaining the bran, the germ, the endosperm. We would like to keep that in our flour because it adds nutrition, flavor, texture. It's just generally better for you. So it's always important to have whole wheat flour on hand so that you can bake very delicious things. The next type of flour we are going to talk about, all-purpose flour. Well, it's called all-purpose for a reason. It's very, very versatile. You got a nice balance between being able to make a cake or being able to make a pizza. You can use all-purpose flour for just about anything under the sun. Bread flour, another relatively versatile flour. It might sound confusing that this particular flour is called bread flour when in fact there are so many different types of flour. And it's just a name, it's just a way for you to remember that this is a higher protein flour. You're most likely going to be making breads or kind of chewier baked goods with this flour. So you typically wouldn't really want to use this if you were making a cake or if you were making muffins. They might come out a little bit too chewy, a little bit too bread-like. And what's up, almond flour? Cool, what's up, P? What's up, coconut? Cocoa. So, I've got a couple of different flours here. They are gluten-free, which means they are not derived from any grain or crop that contains gluten in it. So coconut flour is essentially pulverized coconut, almonds, pulverized almonds. So we call these flours because they can be used to make baked goods for people that might be sensitive to gluten. There's no right or wrong way to use these flours. It's all about finding that balance for what you're looking for when you're baking. Now that we've got a handle on our flour, on our different types of flour that we have available to use in our dough mixes, let's talk about another very important ingredient, and this ingredient is what gives us flavor. The first salt that you might be familiar with is table salt. It's ground very, very fine, so oftentimes you're going to have added things to it like iodine. So it's not typically used in baking, however, you can use it. I have here some very beautiful kosher salt, which is my preferred salt to use. First and foremost, you typically don't find kosher salt to have anything like iodine or anything like that in it, And from a flavor perspective, your kosher salt gives a more balanced and evenly distributed flavor profile. We've got sea salt, and we've got Himalayan pink salt. If you are using this in your bread, I would recommend not using as much. Get familiar with it. Same thing with sea salt. Sea salt is not necessarily something that I would want to put in my dough. However, it's great to flavor your already finished baked good, and it does offer that nice kind of crunchy texture on top of it as well. Just make sure that when you're baking, you remember to add your salt. Otherwise, you'll end up with something that tastes a little bland, very strange. Just don't forget your salt, please. Just put your salt in the dough. Water is the ingredient that is needed for your gluten proteins to get strong, and those are the proteins that are found in your flour. So it's very important that we add water to the flour to get that development process started. Temperature is very important when it comes to water. You don't want your water to be too hot because that can kill all of your yeast activity, and you don't want your water to be too cold because you will get little to no activity for a long time. Nice and lukewarm, perfect temperature for you to make bread at home. You don't need to worry about the exact temperature of the water when making bread. You kind of go with your feel, and that's why it's important to mix with your hands in the bread making process. There's one more ingredient that's extremely important. That's our yeast, or our leavening agent. Basically something that's gonna make our bread rise in the oven when combined with those other three really important ingredients. We have a whole different chapter dedicated to our different types of yeasts, different fermentation methods, sourdough starters, so make sure you tune into that chapter. We are now going to focus on a few other ingredients. These ingredients are not 100% necessary for you to make bread. They're not the key important basic elements. However, when added to your dough, you can derive and achieve specific textures and flavors, like something that's sweeter or more buttery or richer or fluffier. First, eggs. What eggs can do for your dough is add some richness. They can add some fineness to it. It's also a binding agent for your ingredients. Eggs add color, they add some flavor. So eggs are very important for a variety of reasons when you're trying to make a nice, softer, richer bread. We also have butter, okay? Butter is a form of fat. Butter is a very commonly used ingredient when you're trying to make something delicious. If you've ever had a good biscuit or a good pie crust or a flaky pastry or a brioche, you know that butter is very, very critical to deriving that flavor and richness that you expect when using it in your dough. Milk, all right? Got that milkman vibe coming in. It adds more fat, more fullness, more creaminess into our dough. Cinnamon rolls, babka, king cake, beignets. When used in the right balance with water, you can get some extra fat, some extra proteins, and some extra richness in your dough. Here we have some sugar. Very important to making your dough sweet. There's different forms of sugar that you can use. You can use honey, brown sugar, dark brown sugar, light brown sugar, but good old-fashioned plain granulated sugar works just fine. Finding the right combination, finding the right balance when adding these, you're gonna find different results in different doughs. I love using different seeds in my dough: pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, sesame seeds, chia seeds. Whatever kind of seed you might have in your pantry, you probably got some little hidden bag of seeds that were forgotten about that you bought because you were trying to make smoothies with them and then you forgot them. Get those seeds, all right? Find those seeds that you've got somewhere in your pantry and utilize them because they're gonna add a different texture, crunch, crispiness. You can toast them, you can soak them, you can do a number of things to seeds to help change the components of the bread that you're making. In this chapter, we learned about a lot of the basic fundamental ingredients that are necessary to make bread, from your flour and how that interacts with our water. We've also talked about different types of salt that are used to flavor our bread. These ingredients combined with the addition of yeast or a leavening agent are what make bread. We've also touched a little bit on some other ingredients that are optional for certain types of breads, all which provide some form of richness or fineness, fluffiness and softness and texture. Now that we have gone over this and you've become familiar with some of the ingredients necessary to make delicious bread at home, we can go ahead and get started with the bread making process.